NANI?
Oh, hello friend. Today I have something a bit different. As I covered in my last video, there are a ton of game systems and models out there to enjoy, made by passionate people who want you to enjoy them. I wish to bring those things to attention. I find people peer pressured into what's seemingly popular by friend groups but may not be for them. Today I talk about something I enjoy from a company that has earned my goodwill. Perhaps you may enjoy it too. Well-proven goodwill, they do have the habit of putting freebies in the order. Missing or damaged parts from a set get handled the same way. I have heard of people getting the part with an extra sprue or an entire new box. Bolt Action, a game I rather like, is coming out with its 3rd edition. Bolt Action is a platoon-based World War II game. The average game is going to be about 30 guys, a tank, an artillery piece, a heavy weapons team, or 2, and maybe a transport. One of its most praised aspects is random unit activation. Units in an army produce an activation dice. Both armies put their dice into a bag, shake it up, draw one without peeking, until all units are played, which is 1 turn. When a unit is activated, they can perform an action, either run, shoot, or hit the dirt, because there are tigers coming out of those hedgerows.
Oh, man, you guys are crazy! Look, when we was in a Bocaz country, we was assaulted by them tigers. You know what I mean by assaulted?
Save values and overall performance is determined by a unit's veterancy. Green, regular, veteran. Those grades also increase point cost. Going to be hoping for a lot of 5 and 6s. Imperial Guard and Orc players are already very familiar with those save values. Even if a unit doesn't take damage, being shot at will place a pin marker. This also affects their penalties to take your orders. Enough markers and the unit is retired from the game. Melee is simple. You can assault. Whoever loses the first round of combat gets completely routed. Can increase the chance of SMGs and pistols. And part of the ability of winning is to knock out units to increase your dice activation. Basics are fairly simple and straightforward. Bolt Action isn't the only game to use the models, as there are adjacent games also. Konflikt 47, super science with zombies and werewolves, power armor and mechs. I prefer playing only mech and infantry, as it's the only way I will ever get another Ring of Red. Because Konami. There is Tank War, that are tank battles. Achtung Panzer, which is a mix between tank war, traditional board game with light elements of tabletop RPG, considering the crew kind of are the characters. Lastly, Combined Arms, that combines bolt action, naval, and the aerial games to fight on a front or an entire war as Axis and allies with depth. They also help produce some unique stuff. 2000 AD, a Judge Dredd skirmish game that just launched ABC Warriors. Mythic Americas, a skirmish battle with Native American tribes and mythos. Hail Caesar, which is Bronze Age to medieval large-scale battles. SPQR, which is Republic-era skirmish. Pike and Shot, and Black Powder, which is every era of powder charge gun conflict from 1500 to the 1800s. Black Seas, Age of Sail naval combat. Blood Red Skies, mostly World War II aerial combat. There is one set that had post-war jet. Victory at Sea, World War II large naval battles. Cruel Seas, small-scale skirmish battle between patrol boats. We have John Stollard, one of the founders and ex-GW sales manager, face of the company, closest thing tabletop has to Gabe Newell, and we love our Gaben. Andy Chambers, one of the Warhammer Old Guard who worked on 40k and Fantasy as well, as a few of their supplements. You may know him from super iconic yet short-lived games that still have communities that play them. Necromunda, even though that's technically kind of back. Gorka Morka, Battlefleet Gothic, and the 2005 Starship Troopers game. Also Dropfleet, still appears to be supported in it, looks kinda neat. Moving to Warlord, he did Bolt Action and Blood Red Sky supplement. Rick Priestley, a Warlord co-founder, worked on Fantasy 40k and their supplements. Also War Master, which is epic scale fantasy, and the Lord of the Rings games, which I've heard great things about. Moving to Warlord, he worked on the rules for Black Powder, Hail Caesar, Bolt Action, created Beyond the Gates of Antares, and the Warlords of Erewhon. Lastly, we have Alessio Cavatore. He worked on Fantasy and 40k supplements, War Master, Lord of the Rings, Kings of War, and Deus Vult by Fireforge, which does kinda tempt me. Then out of left field, a My Little Ponies game. I'm sure there's a story there, and I'm kind of interested in hearing it. Moving to Warlord, he co-penned the older Bolt Action edition with Priestley. As for the 3rd edition release, the info centers around Cavatore. I'm not yet certain if this is another co-adventure or Cavitors taking the lead. And with all this talent on board, you can see why I'm confident in 3rd edition. So let's go over what we know at the moment. Even though Warlord says pre-orders open in July, Osprey, who handles the printing and art, already has pre-orders open. It looks like the launch date is September 24th. Considerably cheaper as a PDF than physical. Rare to see that these days. There's this weird mentality of people who won't jump on a game if it either hasn't had an edition in a while or a new edition is about to come out. I get the hesitance on time and money investment, though I find it illogical as old editions aren't invalidated. If it looks neat, do some research, you might actually like the old one better. People play prior edition of games on this very site. I bet there are many more people who play games with 1 edition. Heck, I'm pretty sure my feed just showed a guy dressed like a Prussian playing Kriegspiel. GW's way of doing things isn't the norm. You'll find the vast majority of game and model creators won't treat you like a redheaded stepchild. Now, Warlord is practical enough to know this mentality exists and it spreads like a plague. They have prepared for it. If you buy 1 of the starter sets from April 12th till I assume release, you get a code for a free 3rd edition rulebook. And I'm pretty sure it'll be downloadable PDF, but that's like saving $50. The great part about each of the starters is that they already include the 2nd edition rulebook, and they come with 2 armies each. Now there are single army starter sets, but this is only pertaining to the 3-2 army starter sets. Of the 3, 2 are good, 1 is kinda meh. I have them all, and I will say Band of Brothers is a thematic scenario that takes place in the popular Western Front. However, it's a bad deal as the Germans only get like a couple of guys in a half-track against a near platoon of Americans. And the scenario fudges the rules a bit to force a balanced game, and even then, it's still not. From an army building and learning point and cost view, it's not ideal. This, I would think, is guaranteed to be replaced with something better in 3rd. A Gentleman's War, the newest and perhaps best, balance is mostly spot on, the only exception being the German armored car is technically open top. The British one can take an anti-tank gun. For the sake of balance, it might be better to run it with the autocannon. Lastly, we have Island Assault. Pretty good for both sides as the Japanese get a proper tank. However, the Marines are way more versatile. There's a site called Chicago Dice that has a pretty solid rundown on how to build and what to add to these sets, as well as a good synopsis of the campaign books. If you're really going to town, there are single army sets. Not going to go into detail on all of them, but I will say be cautious of the SS, built to 1500 points. That includes 2 tanks. But normal standard play, a reinforced platoon can't take 2 tanks. Even converting the Stug to a Stu 42 still takes the tank slot. Having a Tiger is thematic, though under 2nd edition, the rule of thumb is to never go points heavy on 1 unit. The Tiger takes up nearly 400 for a regular. The Panzer Grenadier is much better, featuring a Puma that can take up an armored car slot, so both it and the Stug can be played. Is possibly the best starter set as all you would need as a transport for further upgrades. We still get the Pack 40 that can 2-inch HE template like the medium mortar, going full Mad Lad, converting the Stug into a Stu 42 for unlimited HE spam. The Blitzkrieg set is showing its age. Hopefully the early war Germans get a new kit. Same for the Russians and the Japanese. Most of the others are fine, though the paratroopers are the cheapest route, but they don't come with vehicles. And shop around, you can get them for about $60. In general, all of them have what you need and are playable out of the box. Most of the Warlord kits are cheap, shopping around, fairly simple in build and detail for wargaming. That does depend if it's plastic or a resin kit. One of Warlord's strengths is they have a lot of uncommon converted capture vehicles you won't see in this scale, if at all, but they're mostly resin and metal. There are very thematic boxes for battles if you're truly dedicated, but they cost a lot, but you also get a lot. If you want things with a bit more options, there is Rubicon, who's also involved with a 28mm Vietnam game Oscar Mike. Their kits generally have a lot more variants through early, mid, and late war, depending on when the vehicle is available. The T-26 model has about a dozen variants alone, and from what I can see in the FAQ, the token, the dice templates are going to be the same. Campaign book still useful for scenario play, even though the specific units added in there may change. One of the main changes is troop selector and changing options. So that may mean things like mortars and spotters are going to get changed as they were the meta. MMG might become decent again like it was in first edition. I hope units like mountain troops do get some love. Their options are pretty terrible and limited other than their default veteran status. Just like second edition, the third edition rulebook will have the unit selectors and stats until army books launch. The rulebook will feature the major factions, minor nations, France, Finland, Hungary, Poland getting PDFs. So it's what I thought, the same general game with overhauls that could only come in a new edition. Andy Chambers got some contract work with Warlord to write and dev for Konflikt 47. About a year or so ago, Warlord bought the game from Clockwork Goblin. It's nice to see they are doing something with it. Bolt Action being their most popular game, pumping up next to it since they use the same models with a different flavor gives me hope. Possibly with Bolt Action 3rd Edition, we may see Konflikt 47 2nd Edition in the future. With the launch of Bolt Action 3rd Edition, we have confirmation of the first army book being Germany with new models first quarter of 2025. I really hope this is an update to the Blitz German models and not some random resin vehicles. These troops need a refresh ASAP. Hopefully when Russia and Japan get their refresh too. Preview pictures, although nice, don't show any new models from what I can tell. That is really all the info we have, and we might have to wait for July for any more news.